I see a lot of athletes who I would say they're earlier in their development, but they've been training long enough to get really excited about it, to be the best that they can. And they get so focused on little details of training that they forget where they are in their progression, and they end up searching for fringe outlier, concepts or advanced forms of training when they have done nothing to build their base, their foundation on simple forms of training. And there's a couple problems that arise when you do that. First of all, if you progress to something that is advanced when you haven't gone through the basic and the intermediate steps to reach that advanced stage that advanced method is really designed for, you're going to limit your progression, because if you jump, say you have, a scale of 0 to 10 or 1 to 10. At 1, it's like learning to run and learning to do a body weight squat or whatever. And then you have number 10, which is like crazy depth jumps or super maximal lifts or overspeed training or things that are super intense, like the most intense form of training that you could conceptualize. If you have that scale and you're at, say, a 3, but you're trying to train like a 7, 8, 9, or 10, well, once you've done that training at 7, 8, 9, or 10, where do you go from there? Where do you progress? If you're in your third year of training and you're already using that final bit of the progression spectrum, where are you going to go? How do you progress your training from there? You can't. You have to regress your training. And there's other issues that I don't have time to get into right now that will arise out of progressing too far into advanced forms of training too soon. The other thing that I think is important to consider here is, if you we'll just say advanced forms of training, but I don't even want to limit the discussion to that, because a lot of the things that people are seeking out are like just bullshit training, like it's stuff that doesn't even work. So we can kind of basket it all together, but we'll just say advanced for now, because it sounds good. So if you're trying to find these advanced forms of training, whether they work or not, and you skip over the foundational aspects of training, it's like taking a car, only has 150 horsepower, and putting a tune in that car's computer. Are you going to make big gains? No, of course not. If you have an engine that you build up, or you swap the engine for something bigger, and then you tune that engine that's built up or bigger, now you're going to get more out of that tune. Well, the same thing applies to training. Basic forms of training, like what I'm doing in this video, squatting, that's a foundational form of training. Maximal strength development, basic strength development, general strength development, all those types of things are fundamental aspects of training. If you jump over that to try and work on your rate of force development, to doing fancier forms of training, but you haven't built that base level of maximal strength, you are the car with the weak engine where you're trying to tune the computer in order to run faster or be more explosive or whatever it is that you're seeking. So you have to pair what you're doing with your level of development. And for most of the people watching this video, finding this channel, looking up how to run faster, for most of you and us, I'll include me in the discussion here, for most of us, the things that we need to do in order to run faster are things like getting stronger in the sense of general strength and maximal strength. We need to get better at basic aspects of technique, like how we control our posture as we sprint, the direction we apply force into the ground, and the amount of force we apply into the ground. If you get stronger, you improve your posture, you improve how you direct force into the ground, and you're able to apply more force to the ground because you're stronger, you're going to run faster. But instead, I see people who, like there was this guy who posted a video about how the shin drop was the most important thing for running faster. He obviously was not fast, judging by the videos of him sprinting. Clearly the method did not work. But that's a perfect example of a fringe idea where it's like the missing the forest for the trees type of thing. It's like you're so caught up on this one little detail, this one little action that happens in sprinting, which is not causal, it's just something that happens. Just because something happens doesn't mean it leads to performance. You're so caught up on that you miss what is actually driving performance, and you miss spending time on the things that are actually going to make you faster, make you stronger, and make you a better athlete. So as you go through training and thinking about training, especially if you're relatively new, and even if you're not relatively new, I think it's always good to be grounded in foundational principles, because then even when you do veer off onto a more experimental path, you're still grounded in those foundational principles, so you don't get so far off the path that you end up in, la la land. For most of us, getting stronger is what we need to do. If you can't squat somewhere around 2 times your body weight, relative ease, and you don't get totally obliterated by it from a recovery standpoint, you probably need to get stronger. You don't have to squat, you can do other exercises, but that's just one example of a strength standard that I think is applicable to athletes. If you can't do that, you probably need to get stronger. Once you can do that, okay, now it's time to think about how can we move weights faster? How can we accelerate the bar more rapidly? How can we accelerate the bar over a shorter period of time so that we're applying a lot of force in a very short period of time? Those are the things that you can then start to think about once you're already strong. But if you're not already strong, there's no point in trying to work on that stuff because you need to get stronger first. You need to move a certain amount of weight before you have the ability to produce force, which then once you have the ability to produce force, you can then manipulate that and try to make your ability to produce force something that can happen more rapidly. If we're talking about technique, if you haven't worked on those basic things I mentioned, posture, direction of force application into the ground, and then the amount of force you're applying to the ground, if you haven't worked on those things, focusing on some, little thing you do with your hand, or, how you spiral your arms, or are you, internally rotating enough at the certain part of the stance phase? Like, you're just way off in left field. Now, there's plenty of people who are going to sell you all kinds of information on this stuff. They're going to sell you all kinds of programs, exercises, seminars, workshops, whatever, when the stuff that they're going to talk about is not going to be what really makes or gets you the progress you're looking for if you're in a stage of development where you still have room to gain from these basic forms of training. So to wrap this up, identify where you are in your development. Are you new to sprinting? Have you been sprinting for a few years? Have you been sprinting a long time? If you have been sprinting a long time, have you consistently maintained your foundational abilities? Have you let go of strength? Have you let go of plyometrics? Have you let go of certain things? Maybe you need to revisit those basics. Once those basics are covered and you can go in the gym and things are easy and you do basic jumping activities, those are easy and all that. Okay, now you can progress to things that are a little bit more advanced. If on the track, your posture looks good, you're applying force in the right direction, you're generally smooth and relaxed but forceful and aggressive, great. Now you can start looking at where can I make a 0.5% improvement on this little thing with my technique. But until you're there, until you've gotten to that point, you're better off focusing on very basic, very simple things like getting stronger, doing very basic forms of sprint training like I've talked about in countless videos or on my website and articles. The information's out there. The information is free. You can build a very basic program with information without paying anyone a dime other than your internet provider. Make the most of that. Get the most out of that. So you can, like I talked about with the car, you can have the strongest engine possible that when you go to tune the computer, now that strong engine can be amplified into something much greater instead of taking your 150 horsepower car and trying to tune that motor and expecting something to happen as a result.